Yeah, first time I'm doing this.
Very good. Good.
I want to start by acknowledging where I'm standing.
Where are you standing?
I'm standing on the corner of Hyde Park.
Very good.
It has a history worth knowing.
Yeah.
In the 1850s and 1860s, mass meetings were held here. Chartists, reformers, and radicals, demanding rights that the establishment considered dangerous. The Reform League gathered here in 1866. Tens of thousands of people demanding the right to vote for working men. The police tried to disperse them, but they pulled down the railings, and the crowd stayed, and Parliament passed the Reform Act the following year. The authorities didn't give up easily. There were arrests, there were prosecutions, and eventually, because the pressure didn't stop, there was a compromise. The Parks Regulation Act in 1872 formalised what the crowd had won by showing up. The right to speak here, in this corner of a royal park, without a licence, without permission to anyone who would listen. It is not a perfect right. It has been tested and contested over the years since, but it exists. And the fact that it exists is because of ordinary people, working people, reformers and radicals who refuse to be silent and paid a price for that refusal. People have stood here ever since. William Morris, who believed beauty and justice were the same project. The suffragettes, who were arrested for claiming rights that now seem obvious. Kwame Nkrumah, who stood here as a student before going home to Ghana to lead the quest for independence. Countless ordinary people whose names we don't know, who have stood on a box and said, "This is what I think, and I am prepared to defend it." I'm in debt to that tradition, and I'm here today to pay my small contribution to it. My name is Aaron. I'm an ecologist and an Earth system scientist, and I grew up in Wales. I turned 40 this year.
Which part of Wales?
Snowdonia.
Wonderful place.
I'm not here as an expert telling you what to think. I've spent a great deal of my career trying to do that, publishing papers, going to conferences, presenting findings to policymakers. And I'll be honest with you, it didn't change as much as I hoped. It turns out that the world doesn't run on peer-reviewed research. Who knew? I'm here because I believe in something simpler, something more demanding than any scientific paper can capture. I believe that we are worth saving. And I think that's a conversation about how to do that honestly and held together across difference is the most important conversation we can currently have, but we're failing to. So let me tell you who I am, where I come from, because I don't think you can separate what someone believes from where it came from. I grew up in Snowdonia, or as they call it, Rurry, the land of eagles in North Wales, in a glacial valley shaped by the first volcanic collisions that built the mountains when Scotland came grinding into England and Wales 450 million years ago, forcing up the peaks whose valleys volcanic rocks give Snowdonia its dramatic profile today. They were then carved out by ice sheets a mile thick during the ice ages, and that ice is gone now. It has been gone for 12,000 years, but the valley remains, holding all of that history in the shape of its falls. As a child, I didn't know any of that. What I knew was hills and beaches and a lot of unsupervised time outdoors. What stopped me in my tracks were the fossils that you could find in rocks, the imprints of creatures that had lived hundreds of billions of years ago in a world so different from the one today it is almost impossible to imagine. And the strangest thing, seashells at the top of the mountains. How does a seashell end up at the very top of a mountain? That question opened up everything. I followed that question and it led me to geology, and then to evolution, and then ecology, and then Earth system science. And now 2 PhDs later and a lot of cold field work in the Arctic, and eventually to standing here, which honestly I'm not sure either PhD prepared me for. But above the valley where I grew up, there is a quarry, the Penrhyn Quarry, one of the largest slate quarries in the world, a hillside ripped open by extraction. It is in any aesthetic assessment, a wound in the landscape.
Is that the one in Bethesda?
That is the one in Bethesda. And it is also something else. It is a place where from 1900 to 1903, 3 years, the quarrymen of Bethesda refused to work under Lord Penryn's conditions. 3 years of community solidarity that held together under enormous pressure. They would not cross the picket line, and they stood together in solidarity for the dignity of their labour. Growing up in Gwynedd, 8 decades after that strike, I knew before I had language for it that you do not cross a picket line. Nobody sat me down and explained it. It was in the air,
Quite there yet.
transmitted through the community across 80 years without losing its force. The theoretical framework came later, but the formation came first.
Wales as in the...
I side with the quarrymen, and I always will.
I'm sure you.
What I saw in the valleys of my home is the same logic written at every scale. The extraction of value from a place and its people, the concentration of that value elsewhere, the externalization of costs onto the community, onto the landscape, and onto the future. What Lord Penryn did to the quarrymen of Gwynedd, the global economy does to communities across the world today. I side with the quarrymen and their equivalents everywhere. My education taught me to see the landscape of Snowdonia differently. Those treeless uplands, bare, brown, ecologically simplified, are not primeval wilderness. They are the product of centuries of sheep grazing that stripped the original forest cover. The rivers run browner than they should because there is nothing left to hold the soil. The silence of the hillsides is not a natural quiet. It is the absence of species that were once there. I learned to see absence as well as presence, and that knowledge, grief and love simultaneously changed how I understood my relationship to the place that I love. Britain is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. We have lost more biodiversity than any comparable nation. Our uplands are ecological deserts, maintained by agricultural subsidy, and our rivers are polluted, our soils are eroding. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. The same landscapes that once were depleted by human choices can be restored by human choices. And there are people doing exactly that work right now. Place-based rewilding, negotiated with and for the communities who live there. Bringing back trees, restoring rivers, creating the conditions for species to return that have been absent for generations. The living world is astonishingly resilient if and when we stop destroying it. That is a reason for hope, not just for grief. So let me tell you what the science says. Not to lecture you, you've heard the headlines, but because I want to be honest about what I actually know and what it feels like to know. We are living through a mass extinction event, the 6th in the history of life on Earth. The previous 5 were caused by asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, and the slow collision of continents. But this one is caused by us, by the way we organize our economies and our societies. I want to dwell on that for a moment. That word, extinction. We're used to it casually, but think about what it actually means when a species goes extinct. A lineage that began hundreds of millions of years ago ends, not just for now, forever. No future generation of any species will ever encounter it again. It is not a death, it is an erasure, a permanent narrowing of what is possible. As an ecologist, I don't experience that as a statistic. I experience it as a loss. The silence where there should be insects, the changed timing of the seasons, the species absent from landscapes that held them within living memory. And the climate. I spent years studying it in the Arctic, watching permafrost that had been frozen for thousands of years begin to thaw, watching carbon that had been locked away release into the atmosphere. The feedbacks, they are real. The tipping point, they are real. And we are already inside this crisis. The question is not whether it happens, but how bad it gets. So here's what makes the moment different from any previous crisis in human history. We are the first generation to understand in real time, with scientific precision, the damage that we are doing and what it will cost.
What's the damage that the US Air Force and the Israeli Air Force doing to Iran and all the infrastructure in the Gulf and everything? That's more fucking real than this bullshit.
No, that's real too.
That's more real, man. You know, destroying oil fields is more real. You know, you see it on CNN, Sky News.
You don't believe that, do you?
Really? Oh, that's fake, is it?
The IPCC,
Hitting an oil tanker is fake.
thousands of scientists from dozens of countries, reviewing tens of thousands of studies, has told us with extraordinary clarity what is happening and what that needs to
Don't
happen.
worry about it, mate. Don't
We
worry.
cannot claim ignorance.
Just go and have a beer down the pub.
So what are we
Watch the
so
football.
why aren't we acting? That is the question I have spent the second half of my career studying, and the answer is not, as some would have it, human nature. It is not that we are innately greedy, short-sighted, or incapable of collective action. The answer is a system, an economic system, that externalizes its costs. That's the answer.
The fucking rich people,
That
man.
dumps them onto
Fucking rich
nature,
people.
onto workers,
I called
onto
it.
communities,
Workers.
onto
I've got any
future
workers
generations.
anymore. I see.
A political system that has been captured by the interests that benefit from that dumping.
Yes.
A media system designed to fragment after attention and manufacture down.
Yeah.
These are not natural facts.
No.
They are choices
Yes.
made by people. And choices made by people can be unmade by people. I want to tell you what I believe.
Okay.
Yeah?
You live in fairies. You live in Darth Vader. Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Force.
I'm not going to tell you what I think, but I'm going to say what I think arrived at honestly,
Theory.
held fallibly, and open to revision. I'll start at the beginning.
You have to.
Life is beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
mean
you've
that.
got £1 million in the bank.
I don't mean that sentimentally. I mean that as a foundational observation. The fact that matter has organized itself over 4.5 billion years into beings capable of wonder, capable of love,
talking
of
about me.
grief, of curiosity, of standing in
Your
a
globe
park
is too small for you.
and arguing about how we should live. It is extraordinary. Carl Sagan put it better than I can.
Okay.
From 4 billion miles away in space,
Vegetarian.
the Earth appears as a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Everything that has ever happened in human history has been enacted on this pale blue dot. From the appropriate response to that is not a perspective, is not nihilism, it is wonder. And from wonder, at least in my case, comes a sense of reverence.
No, it's all right. If it just
A
gets
sense
sniffed
that
out,
this
who cares?
improbable, fragile,
Just like that.
extraordinary thing that we are a
Candle in the
part
wind.
of is worth protecting.
Can you speak English?
The whale in Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that is suddenly called into existence far above an alien planet, discovering the world with innocent delight for the first time, wondering what the ground below him is,
I still don't get it.
before finding
I
out
was talking about a book or something.
that's us, briefly here, briefly astonished. And the question is,
I just
what do
wanna
we
have
do
a
with
laugh.
that time? If existence is this improbable, is this precious, then everyone who shares it carries the same fundamental worth. That seems to me to follow directly. The person sleeping rough outside of this park, the person in a village in Bangladesh whose home will be underwater in a generation, the quarry worker
Okay, what are we
in
gonna
North
do?
Wales
What are we
whose
gonna
labour
do?
built Victorian Britain's rooftops, each of whom is improbable.
What about
as
the poor
irreplaceable.
bastards getting bombed in Gaza and Lebanon today?
Yes.
So what are
yes.
we going to do?
Each of them as improbable
You're
and
getting
irreplaceable, as worthy of the conditions of a flourishing life as everyone else. My love for my valley in North Wales is real.
That's where you should belong.
Therefore, everyone's love
Stick to that.
of everywhere is real. My life matters. Therefore, everyone's life matters. The logic extends without limit, or it doesn't work at all. And it extends beyond the human. The living world that produced us and sustains us, the species being driven to extinction, the ecosystems being dismantled. These have value that doesn't depend on what they do for us. 4 billion years of evolution, finding its own ways of being alive. their loss, their destruction is not just an ecological statistic, it is a moral wrong. There is an argument that you'll hear. Maybe you're thinking it right now. That goes, who are you to tell me what to think and what to do?
No, I want to know what to do.
Keep your hands off my life.
Yeah.
I have enormous sympathy
Who to do it
for that
with.
instinct.
More importantly,
They're very
The
important.
history of states telling people
alive.
how to live is not a happy one. But I want to challenge the idea of freedom that underlies it. The dominant version of freedom in our political culture is of negative freedom. Freedom of the absence of interference.
I know, right?
Don't tax me. Don't regulate me.
You do it in double
Don't
tempo.
tell me what to do. Just leave me alone. The problem is that that version of freedom is only available to people who already have what they need.
Yeah.
If you can't afford a doctor, you are not free from illness.
Right.
You're just unprotected from it.
We're just watching a speech.
If you grow up without a decent education, you are not free to think. You're just unequipped to.
It's one of my special abilities.
If you're working 3 jobs with the rent paid, you are not free to examine your life. You are just too exhausted to.
We don't.
I know this personally.
rubbish.
The freedom I've had to follow that chain of curiosity from the fossil on a Welsh valley to the Arctic and 2 PhDs to standing here was in itself.
Are you wasting your time talking to us?
We're idiots.
That's a good point.
On educational support of a learning difference that might otherwise have closed doors. On a
Learning
society that, however imperfectly, invested in my capacity to be free. And that society did not appear from nowhere. Those freedoms were won by the suffragettes who campaigned in this exact spot. By the charters who gathered in this park.
Let's go over
Their struggle,
Let's go.
their sacrifice, their refusal to accept that things couldn't be different. That is what I am standing on, literally, right here.
There's a box. There's a box.
That's what Timothy Snyder calls positive freedom. Freedom isn't just the absence of interference, it is the presence of conditions. And the conditions for genuine freedom, that is health, education, security, care, and time, have to be built collectively and made available to everyone. Or they're not
just
really
working to the
freedom.
bone.
They're just privilege, dressed up as a universal. So when someone says, don't interfere with my freedom, I want to ask them, whose freedom? The freedom of a person who can already afford to opt out of every collective system? Or the freedom of the person for whom the collective systems are the only thing standing between them and a life too constrained to call free at all? The project of expanding freedom is not just the project of getting the state out of people's lives, it is the project of building the conditions that make genuine freedom possible for everyone.
Give him the chance, see?
That is what I mean by socialism. Still boring. So what follows from this? The conditions for genuine freedom don't stop at the social. They extend to the ecological. Clean water, functioning soil, a stable climate, a living
Stable
biosphere.
climate. How can a climate? You
Shut up.
really know nothing about climatology if you think
These are not
climate is
luxuries.
stable.
They are foundational
They're forever
provisioning
changing.
systems on which everything else depends, provided by the living world for free, for as long as we don't destroy them. But we are destroying them.
So Greta Thunberg.
You know, they were destroying them.
Think about what the economy is actually for.
destroyed.
Not what we're told it's for. What it's actually for is for provisioning human needs, for ensuring that people have food, have
needs a-
shelter,
he needs a
have
bucket
warmth,
of sand to put his
have
head in.
healthcare, have education,
Oh no, he's already got.
have meaningful work, have community, have time.
Meaningful work.
That's
That's the middle class.
That's it.
Guy. Not meaningful work for you and I. We need the immigrants for that. Correct.
The resources, they exist. The knowledge, it exists. What we lack is not the capacity, but the political will to organise differently. The problem is not that there are too many people. It is that the system extracts wealth from the many concentrates it in the hands of the few and dumps the cost
You
onto
say House
nature
of the Jew.
No, the few.
and the future.
How's your hearing? How's your hearing doing?
A study found that none of the world's top industrial sectors would be profitable if required to pay the true cost of their operations. None of them. The entire edifice is built on expropriation of workers, of communities, of the living world, of future generations.
Have a committee.
Robert Kennedy
get on with
said
that.
in 1968 that GDP measures everything except that
Did he
which
say
makes
that?
life worthwhile. There is a cartoon by Tom Tools that you might have seen. A man in a disheveled
She
suit
gives him a blow
sitting
to
around
the one going.
a campfire
I watched that.
in a post-apocalyptic landscape, telling a story of 3 young children.
There.
Yes, the
doom and
planet
gloom
got
of
destroyed,
socialism.
he says. But for a peaceful moment in time,
in the
he created a lot of value for
The
shareholders.
landscape is, I can't say it, say the word for me.
I don't know.
It's funny because it's horrifying.
Apocalyptic.
And it's horrifying
Landscape is
because
apocalyptic.
it's where we're headed. Which is why I don't simply call myself a socialist.
The poor people.
I call myself an eco-socialist. Because the bigger picture
Eco-socialism.
includes the living world
Bit like
itself.
national socialism.
We depend on its life support systems. And those systems depend on our care and our reverence for them.
Arrogance. The systems depend on us. The insects depend on us.
Requires that the social conditions, the suffragettes and the charters fought for in this very park, and the ecological conditions that the living world has provided since before us species exist,
Anything just not here.
both are under threat from the same system.
Yeah, the rich,
Both
evil rich
require
people.
the same
Yeah, find them.
I'm not going to pretend that I have a blueprint.
No,
Nobody
kind
does.
of are. A red print, not a blueprint.
Very good.
But the direction is clear. The
Left,
economy is organised
left,
around
left.
human need
Yes.
rather than profit.
Yes.
Democratic
People think through
ownership
it.
and control of the
People
system
think
that
through it.
provisionise.
Weird guys here.
Energy systems
Which
that
one?
don't cook the planet. Food systems that don't
no.
bring the soil. Housing that houses people rather than speculating on poverty. Care of children, of the elderly, of the sick, of the vulnerable, recognised and resourced as the foundational infrastructure it actually is, and not treated as an afterthought or a cost to be minimised. A just transition away from fossil fuels
you have two
doesn't
things
just
that are not
ask the
memorised.
communities most dependent on them to bear the costs of a crisis that they didn't cause. Global governance of a commons, the atmosphere, the oceans, the biosphere,
The turtles.
because
Don't forget the
these are
turtles.
problems that no nation can solve alone. And the rewilding
Remember
of
the
Britain's
turtles.
depleted landscapes, not imposed from above, but negotiated with the communities who live there,
Through committees.
as part
That's what I
of
said
different
earlier.
relationships between people and the living world.
What do you think of both asylum seekers coming to these?
The number one cause of climate change is immigration. That's the number one.
No, it's not. It's not.
Too many foreigners.
We have disturbed the wetlands. We have destroyed the English landscape. There's one increase in land. Five and
Montreal
immigration.
Protocol showed that international cooperation on global environmental commons is possible. The
How many
ozone
coal-fired
layer
power
is another
stations is
thing.
China
Actually
building?
recovering.
A week?
Citizens' assemblies have shown repeatedly that ordinary people
Say this outside the Chinese embassy.
and good information reach
They
citizens'
will deal with
solutions
Well,
without harm to the men. Social movements have shown
Like China.
what
you
seems
mean.
holistically impossible can become inevitable within.
Why do they always have autocratic people at the top?
The
Socialist
suffragettes
movements. Every single
were
one.
told that it was impossible.
Throughout history.
Many of them stood right here to say otherwise. The
How
Chartists
successful were they?
told it was impossible, but they gathered in this very park and said it wasn't impossible. And
So
then it
lots of
happened.
people gathered.
So I'm here to say today that my vision is not impossible for Malaysia. Now, I want to be honest with you
Can you be honest without
about what I don't know.
No, you don't. Yeah.
I don't know if we'll make it. I genuinely don't
We're
know.
all going to die. We're all going to die.
Climate change
Happening
is immigration.
required.
You must understand
Politics
this.
is not keeping place.
The leading cause of climate change is immigration.
It's not.
But why are they building all over all our green
I'll
land
tell
to
you,
build
right?
houses?
I turned 40 this year.
No.
Some
Don't believe it.
40.
that's considered
You don't look a day over 50.
in my case,
You're pushing 60.
it's a lot of field work in uncomfortable places.
Field work?
And some deeply
Yeah,
Is
embarrassing
this part of the
opinions.
field work?
And slowly dawning recognition that certainty is usually a sign that you're not paying close enough attention.
We're stupid, we can't help it.
My positions have changed
Why we listen
constantly,
to you.
and I expect them to keep changing. But what I now believe is that it's not what I believed at 25, and I hope that it's not what I believe at 60. The examined life is not a destination, it is a practice, always incomplete, always capable of being wrong. What I am confident in is the direction. Life has value. People have worth. The living world deserves our care, and the economy exists to provision human flourishing, not to grow indefinitely at the expense of everything else. These commitments aren't going to change for me. And I believe, and this is a bet, not a certainty, but that more people share something like these commitments than the current political landscape suggests. That beneath the noise and the culture war and the epistemic chaos, there is common ground
You got
that we're being
supporters.
encouraged to find.
Zombies.
So I want to close.
Don't agree with zombies.
I want to close with something personal.
Love of the land.
A few years ago,
The hate
I
of the
moved
right.
myself
No, the love
to
of
the
the left.
Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in Westminster with 8 other scientists. We stuck scientific papers to the windows and our hands to the glass, and we waited until the police came and peeled us off. We were found not guilty.
Who's paying you?
I tell you that not to boast. I'm aware it sounds slightly absurd. A group of scientists stuck to a government building. We were aware of that too. That was partly the point. But I tell you that that morning, before I left, I stood in front of a mirror and I asked myself a question. Am I the person that I hoped I was? And I found, with some surprise, that I was. Not because I was brave, because I cared. I'm not comparing myself to the people who stood up this corner before me, to the struggle of the tradition that I acknowledged at the beginning. Those are different scales of courage and sacrifice entirely, but I claim membership in that tradition. As an ordinary person who cares, who showed up when the moment came, in the company of others, on the behalf of something larger than myself.
They're all socialists, well-intentioned.
The philosopher
Until they run
Wang
out of
Yang
our
Ming
money.
said, there have never been people who know but do not act.
And when you run out of our money,
Genuine
what are you gonna
understanding
do?
always generates the obligation to act on it. If you truly know something, then you act on it. What we call knowing without acting is not yet real knowing. What I want to say to you, whoever you are, whatever you believe, whether you agree with a word I said or think you're completely wrong, is this. The conversation that we have about how to live together on this finite planet. That is what Speaker's Corner is for. That is what democracy is for. That is what the examined life is for. So as I turn 40 this year, I've tried in this address to tell you what I actually think and why.
Examined life, it's pretty good.
That is what the examined life is for. And I expect to be wrong about some of it. I expect to keep learning. But I believe that we are worth saving. And I believe that the conversation about how to do that is worth having, honestly and together, across every difference that divides us. Thank you for stopping.